After the supreme monarch of Bulgaria Ferdinand the First bought Lucifer in 1891, he later wrote that men at his court crossed themselves when they walked past it. That reaction remains the painting's perfect first review because Lucifer does not terrify by noise. He terrifies by his silent and unbearable gaze. The reason this painting is so genius is that there is no flaming pit, no battle in heaven, no horned monster leaping out of the dark, no parade of demons, no thunder or spectacle. There is only a seated figure in shadow, waiting, watching, thinking, and looking back at us with a stare that feels like straight from hell itself. Lucifer in Christian tradition was once an angel who rejected God and fell, cast out of light into eternal separation. Stuck does not paint that fall as an event, he paints it as a condition. The revolt is over, the punishment is ongoing, the entire hell of that godless existence is compressed into one motionless body and one unbearable gaze. That is why the painting still feels dangerous. Evil here is not staged as action but as presence. But before we uncover the hidden meaning, thank you for supporting this channel. Each like and subscription contributes meaningfully to the preservation of real, authentic human art in an era increasingly saturated with algorithmically generated AI content. Our mission is to support, celebrate, and promote art created by human hands and human imagination. Now let's begin our analysis. Painted in 1890, the large Lucifer canvas belongs to Stuck's dark monumental phase and remains one of the best-known works in Sofia's National Gallery, where it has come to stand as an emblem of late 19th century art. Its status has only grown with time. The painting has traveled repeatedly in major exhibitions. The 2024 Sofia Art Fair reunited it with the Guardian of Paradise and restored something close to its original dramatic meaning. That pairing is crucial because Stuck was not simply painting a devil for shock value. He was constructing a before and after, angelic force before the rupture and the same force after it has turned inward, soured, and hardened. What makes Lucifer so sharp is that Stuck refuses the old church devil formula. He gives us no horns, no hooves, no claws, no pitchfork, no theatrical props that would let viewers keep evil at a safe distance. Instead, he gives Lucifer a human body, monumental, nearly nude, muscular, and exposed. More than one serious reading of the picture lands on the same point. This is not the conventional ecclesiastical devil, but evil turned inward, humanized, modernized, made psychological. That is the shock of the painting. It makes damnation look intelligent. This refusal of old iconography changes everything. A horned medieval devil belongs to doctrine and legend. Stuck's Lucifer belongs to the world of human feeling. He is still supernatural, still the fallen angel, still the genius of evil. But the figure grips us because he looks less like a monster than like a mind with a body attached. The result feels strangely modern, closer to a psychological close-up than to a religious warning image. Long before cinema or modern pop culture discovered the appeal of the damaged villain, Stuck had already found the formula. The body tells the story before the viewer has even named it. Lucifer sits on a ledge, pressed toward the front of the canvas, close enough to loom and yet confined enough to seem pinned in place. His knees are tightly together, his feet nearly meet. His left fist props up the cheek and partly covers the mouth, as if speech has hardened into silence. His right arm reaches back and grips a wing instead of letting it open. Nothing extends outward, everything folds inward. The body is magnificent, broad-shouldered and powerful, but the pose is compressed, tightened, trapped. This is not a triumphant rebel posing for admiration. It is power turned into self-containment. That bodily compression gives the painting much of its force. Stuck does not deny Lucifer's former glory. The chest is strong, the wings immense, the body still remembers rank. But grandeur has curdled into tension. The shoulders remain powerful while the knees press together and the torso leans forward. The wings are not spread in display but dragged back into darkness as if angelic identity itself had become a burden. He is not physically destroyed, he is inwardly collapsed. The pose records not defeat in battle but life after the fall. That pose is not accidental. Stuck places Lucifer inside a visual lineage of thinking figures. Writers have linked him to Michelangelo's Pensieroso and, even more strongly, to Auguste Rodin's Thinker. The head resting on the hand is the old sign of reflection, but here reflection has curdled into brooding. Descriptions of the pose as a gesture of melancholy get very close to the emotional truth of the image. This Lucifer is not driven by animal appetite or theatrical rage. He is driven by thought. He sits like someone condemned to think forever, trapped inside an interior life that cannot stop turning over memory, pride, humiliation, and resentment. That is why the painting feels so still. In the usual narrative sense, almost nothing is happening. Yet the silence becomes oppressive because the real action is interior. Pride, rage, grief, guilt, and memory are feeding one another inside a closed circuit. Stuck gives us not the event of evil, but its afterlife in consciousness. Hell is no longer scenery. Hell is a mental condition. The eyes are the painting's real center of gravity. Nearly every serious reading of Lucifer returns to them because the eyes are where the picture truly detonates. They are pale, greenish, almost electric. They seem to switch on before the rest of the body does. In a canvas devoured by darkness, the stare becomes the main event. But what makes those eyes so disturbing is not just their brightness. They do not express a single emotion. They carry hatred, yes, but also sorrow, resentment, wounded pride, and the aftertaste of loss. A simple monster would be easier to file away. Stuck's Lucifer looks injured, and injured evil is harder to forget. That mixture matters. Sorrow alone would make him tragic. Hatred alone would make him monstrous. Resentment alone would make him merely bitter. Stuck fuses them. The eyes accuse, but they also remember. They burn, but not with triumph. They look like a mind still feeding on the memory of what it once possessed. That is why the stare feels invasive. It does not simply ask to be seen. It drags the viewer into the picture. There is nowhere else to look, no background narrative to escape into, no side drama in the corners. The darkness strips away distraction and the viewer becomes the other half of the composition, the one receiving the glare. Then there is the small blue light beside Lucifer's drawn-back arm, one of the strangest and most revealing details in the whole painting. It is easy to miss because the eyes seize attention first, but that little flare changes the entire meaning of the image. It can be read as a phosphorescent trace, a remnant of life, the last spark of hope in shadowy hell. It can also be read through the older meaning of the name Lucifer, the morning star, which turns the blue light into a trace of fallen radiance. That detail prevents the picture from flattening into a simple image of evil. Something remains, some wound of light still hangs on, and that is what makes the painting darker. Absolute darkness would be easier. Stuck gives Lucifer memory instead. The blue glow can be read at once as remnant, insult, and ghost, the lingering sign that this creature once belonged to brightness. Lucifer is terrifying not because he never knew the light, but because he cannot stop remembering it. In this image, hell is not mere pain. It is consciousness of what has been forfeited. The wings deepen that tragedy. Stuck keeps them, which means Lucifer is still visibly a fallen angel and not merely an angry man in the dark. But he does not turn them into a grand emblem of power. they hang downward like a curtain of dark feathers, heavy and dim. The right hand grips one wing almost as if it were something to restrain, manage, or hide rather than reveal. The wings preserve the memory of what he was. The gesture shows what that memory has become. Glory has turned into weight. Stuck's color choices reinforce the same psychological pressure. The flesh does not feel warm or healthy. It is cold, gray, violet, almost bloodless in places, hovering between body, stone, and smoke. The darkness around Lucifer is unstable rather than solid, so that he appears half emerged from it and half consumed by it. The result is why the painting feels less like a narrative illustration than like an emotional climate. The darkness around Lucifer is unstable rather than solid, so that he appears half emerged from it and half consumed by it. The background is barely a place at all. It is atmosphere, pressure, and mind. This is where the painting reveals its true genius. Stuck does not paint hell as a place around Lucifer. He paints hell as something embodied in Lucifer himself. That distinction becomes especially sharp when Lucifer is compared with his later Inferno. In the later work, horror spreads outward through crowds of tormented bodies and physical violence. In Lucifer, horror is concentrated into a single figure who contains the whole climate of damnation inside himself. Stuck cuts away the plot and keeps the close-up. The effect feels almost cinematic before cinema fully arrives. No scenery, no crowd, just one mind in the dark. That inward turn mattered deeply at the fin de siècle. Stuck's art has often been placed alongside figures like Richard Wagner, Friedrich Nietzsche, and Sigmund Freud, not because Lucifer literally illustrates their ideas, but because it shares the same obsession with psychic fracture and the unstable inner self. Seen in that wider context, the painting becomes more than a biblical image. It becomes a portrait of alienation, a being defined by separation, self-consciousness, thwarted pride, and interior pressure. This is also why the painting refuses moral simplification. It does not ask us to admire Lucifer, but it refuses to let him remain a stock villain. He becomes not only hatred, but hatred mixed with memory, shame, pain, and intelligence. He is evil, but evil with a human element. That is what makes the image so unsettling. Stuck's devil is terrifying not because he is completely inhuman, but because he is almost too human. The emotional temperature of the painting is therefore not horror alone, but melancholy. That word comes closer than more obvious labels like terror or wickedness. Lucifer is frightening, but it is also sad. The figure is isolated, locked inside a self that has turned against itself. The silence is part of the menace, the stillness is part of the punishment. The fall is over, but exile continues. Every second, the figure remains conscious of what he has lost. This becomes even clearer when the painting is viewed beside the Guardian of Paradise, its intended counterpart. That reunion, restored in Sophia's 2024 exhibition, helps recover the original dialogue between the two works. The proud guardian before the rupture and the huddled Lucifer after it complete one another. Once seen together, small details in Lucifer become sharper. The wings stop being generic signs of angelic identity and become reminders of expulsion. The bent head and cramped knees become more than mood. They become evidence of fallen status. Paradise begins to haunt the painting from outside the frame. What we are looking at is not only evil, but exile. The later life of the work confirms its lasting force. What began as a royal acquisition became a museum centerpiece. It made its first international appearance in Berlin in 1972 and has since returned in exhibitions devoted to symbolism, melancholy, punishment, and the devil himself. Curators and critics do not keep returning to Lucifer simply because it is dark. They return to it because it made an old subject feel new. It stripped away decorative theology and replaced it with psychological intensity. It gave a legendary figure the cachet of strangeness by making him feel inwardly recognizable. That is why the story of men crossing themselves still makes sense. Stuck found the version of Lucifer that is hardest to neutralize. Not the medieval beast, not the theatrical red demon, not the monster safely sealed inside doctrine. He found the Lucifer who thinks, remembers, resents, and still carries traces of lost light. He found the Lucifer whose body retains the memory of glory while his pose records collapse. He found the Lucifer who sits in silence and lets his eyes do the violence. The painting still works because it does not depend on whether we believe in a literal devil. It presents the devil in his most human form, filled with recognizably human emotions, resentment, pride, hate, and sorrow intertwined. And then it asks something even more unsettling. Do we recognize the emotional pattern on the canvas in ourselves? Pride after loss, rage after humiliation, brilliance turned poisonous, thought turned into a prison, a magnificent being folded inward under the weight of memory, trapped in his own internal hell. That is the dark secret of Stuck's Lucifer. Hell is not far away, it is here, it exists within him, and we can see that eternal torment burning directly in his eyes. Thank you for watching. Your support helps sustain and promote authentic human creativity in an era increasingly shaped by soulless AI-generated content. We remain committed to our mission of preserving the value, depth, and originality of art created by real humans and human imagination. We look forward to seeing you in the next video.